Hello and welcome to Dicepunks, a tabletop role-playing podcast where we focus on playing full campaigns in less well-known systems. This week, the Frontispiece Four make plans with very little lead time to head to a very suspicious soirée. Hello and welcome. I'm Adam, your friendly neighborhood game master, and joining me are...
Hi, I'm Drew, and I'll be playing Kato, who sits at the front of this front and backs these backroom dealings.
Hi, I'm Robin, and I'll be playing Callisto Armitage, but that's... You know what? No, never mind. That's still officer to you.
Hi, I'm Dez, and I will be playing Byrne, who supports a healthy disrespect for authority.
Hi, my name is Nick, and I am playing Ing, who's also here.
Good.
We're so glad for that, too.
Well, thank you for being here, Ing and others, Dick and others, as the case may be. Let's get right into this session with our recap of last time, this time, courtesy of Byrne.
So, the rest of my team having slow-clapped me into my accomplishments, I left them to whatever they were going to be up to. I checked in with K and B, who was pleased at the results and offered to set up a search tool for my use, as well as sending over some funds to the bookshop as recompense. I asked her about the canopus.drs directory without specifying to her that I'd received an invitation from it. It contained essentially a personnel file on a Canopus Hiryu, recruited by cartel corporations to work on Grand Cross. He apparently took his own life within a year of arrival. He was survived, I later learned, by his daughter, a gossip monger named Hari. This may be the Hahi who issued the invitation that I'm worrying about. I eventually returned to the others' discussion, hoping that they'd gotten their fill of talking about me. I got a bit of time in on checking up on the backstory of our entangled cop as well. But once I returned, we discussed reading Bronway in, and we did so, talked about Canopus the person, and the pie-spewing monster, apparently a creepypasta called Over3, and I pulled Kato aside to alert them to the invitation and the worrying and hopefully impossible means of its arrival. Similarly, hopefully, Hahi, whoever she may be, has benign intentions. We'll see at the party in 3 days. We return to discuss this with the others, at which point the good officer, watching Ing perform anonymizing drone surgery to protect them against witnesses, informed me that I would not be going to this rendezvous, demonstrating a remarkable ignorance of their ability to stop me. All of this was interrupted by the officer receiving an APB about an incident at JDB involving a student.
And that is pretty precisely where we pick up here. The interruption to the conversation, Cal's part anyway, specified that walking near the JDB, a female student of South Asian extraction had been attacked in some unspecified way, and that people should be on the lookout. People in this case being recipients of PSS's emergency services messages, which includes PSS as well as other university personnel. So we pick up there sometime probably Saturday afternoon-ish with some wiggle room at the frontispiece in the wake of Cal receiving this message.
I text Ramirez to ask if she had blue hair.
Ramirez texts back, "What? No."
I respond with a thumbs up, then ask if my assistance is needed or expected.
This one takes a little longer to get a response, but Ramirez messages you back saying, "No more than usual, just a lookout."
I respond with another thumbs up emoji, but I this one has a smiley face attached to it.
Oh, good. Presumably, this sort of results in a bit of a gap in the ongoing conversation that may clue others at the frontispiece into the fact that you have another conversation going on. How much they care, or how much you care to tell them, of course, up to you all. But
I definitely held up a single finger before. I should specify it's my index finger in this case for once. Before turning my attention to the texts.
Mm-hmm.
Do we think that's related? I mean, we'll find out, I guess.
Hearing this in the background as I am still texting Ramirez, I shake my head once.
Is that good or bad? I'm not even sure at this point. Fresh problems.
I pocket my phone, having sent the thumbs up and smiley face emoji by this point.
Everything all right in relative terms?
No. A student was assaulted outside of JDB, so I'm advised to just keep a lookout. I don't think any action is needed currently.
Does being here constitute keeping a lookout?
Yes, though in a different context.
Shame.
For you? Sure.
Look, nobody here has shame. Okay, let's move on.
Bronwyn says, not quite under her breath, "I wish."
That's an in-character.
Fair enough.
Cal, it might go without saying, but if you ever need the drones for surveillance on campus, let me know.
I would, should the need ever arise. But, if any of the surveillance they recover needed to be presented in court, I'd have a hard time explaining why.
Well, I do legal jobs too sometimes. I mean, not recently, but it's not illegal to have drones.
I clutch imaginary pearls at I do legal jobs sometimes.
I gesture you to an invisible fainting couch.
Oh, they're doing bits now.
We've always done bits. Yeah.
It's a coping mechanism.
I'm nothing but
I
bits.
guess the usual difference is that the bits are more private, come to think of it.
The filters are coming down, I think, at this point.
Well, is there any prep that we need to do for this meeting with Hagi? I mean, not to name the elephant in the room, but there's one.
As a mechanical consideration, the time frame given by the invitation means that there will not be time to do group prep. Everybody has the time for one personal prep action, and that's about it if you are treating this missionally. If you are going to do prep and treat it missionally, that also means that we roll for economic shock. So, if you wish to nominate your prep actions, then we'll do economic shock and then prep actions and then get to the party, so to speak.
I think we said that my shopping around for augments was going to be an ongoing process, so I take it that process could get sort of cut off if I lose the cash that I was shopping around with at this point.
It could. The economic shock can have a few different outcomes, and you roll to see whether you lose cash generally at the end of a session rather than at the beginning of a mission. If you suffer economic shock prior to this mission, it will mean that you don't get any small business owner cash. But if you don't suffer economic shock, then you'd get 2 more cash.
Gotcha.
Remind us of the roll for economic shock.
2d6 plus burden. Try to get under a 13.
Well, I think we are going into a mission, yeah. So
All right.
Seems
Well,
yeah.
then let's get rolls. We'll go in roll call order, so to speak. So,
Okay.
Drew, your burden roll, please. 2d6 plus burden.
that is a 9 total.
A 9 total. You do not suffer economic shock, and thus you do get 2 more cash.
Nice.
Robin.
Okay, let me see. My burden is 2.
Mhm.
So
2d6 plus 2.
I got a 4 plus 2 is 6.
All right. You do not suffer economic shock, and thus are
Ooh.
fine.
I rolled a
Des.
6, so my burden of 3 is a 9.
All right. You are safe as well. Ing. Well, Nick, I guess I called everybody else by their player names.
It's fine. Yep. I rolled a 6 plus 1, so I think that I'm safe as well for the time being.
You are. Yeah, you guys have had really good outcomes on these burden rolls so far this campaign. So now we go into prep. How are we handling, or I guess we are handling it individually because we don't have time for group prep, which I mean is also rolled individually. But for our individual prep actions, what do we think we might do?
I think I, knowing I'm playing with fire, address both Cal and Byrne and say, "So, what do you need?" Because I think Bronwyn and I can do some fixerish shit.
Mhm.
Be on deck to do it during the mission, but also do it in advance of the mission. Yeah.
Indeed. So, as a reminder to our listeners and as necessary to our players, you can take a personal prep action, 2d6 plus an ability plus a specialty, and the higher over 7 that you roll, the more prep you accumulate for that. We won't be using group prep this time because of the time frame, but one of the things you can do as a prep action, so instead of rolling personal prep, is acquire an asset, which is 2d6 plus cool plus the relevant specialty. And that allows you to try to source any particular items or assets that you want to have for the upcoming mission, with the sort of difficulty threshold increasing if you want something that is restricted or illegal.
And I have the talent I know a guy, so my price is decreased and illegal items are less additionally challenging for me than they would be for other people. So if there's an asset we need, this would be a good way to acquire it.
Indeed, especially while you are, relatively speaking, kind of flush. What do we think we need to decide about in order to pursue our personal prep, players?
The last thing was, I said to both Cal and to Byrne, "So, what do you need?"
Support.
With
With a pointed glare at
I-
the officer.
That
Yeah.
glare is returned tenfold, along with grumpily crossed arms. Covert armor, ideally, that would fit his scale. I managed to
Okay.
make that an insult.
We're getting somewhere. Support you got. Armor is probably achievable. And I guess the other thing we definitely need is a plan. As in, let's be clear about who's going in.
I thought we'd
I think it's
established that
best
I
to
am.
send me.
Sounds like the two of you then.
Thrilling.
Just how I need to spend an afternoon. Babysitting.
Meanwhile, I could scope out the joint.
Hey, out of character. Can I interrupt that, Nick?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Mhm.
So, as you were saying that, if you don't fucking like me, why are you so insistent on doing things at or for me?
There's this whole thing
You
called
give so many
protect and
fucking
serve.
mixed signals.
I think that goes with the territory of figuring out who can be trusted.
You can't be. We've established that.
And I feel mutually.
Great. Well, stay the fuck out of my way then.
All right, you're both profoundly annoyed by each other and neither wants the other to die. That doesn't sound like a contradiction to me. It sounds like nuance.
I'm not going to let a kid go into what is obviously a trap. That would be against the oath that I took years ago, as you seem to be aware.
I always thought the oath was sarcastic.
For many, yes.
I mean, it's not legally binding.
It's ethically binding. It's one of the few things that matters to me.
The look on my face tells you that this possibility has never occurred to me before, that anyone considers it ethically binding.
I don't know whether the mic accurately captured my abrupt snickering.
Smirk. So I think what I'm doing with my prep is asking around for some combat armor. This is an item in the rulebook for the GM's reference, page 84.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to get something so that,
currently at combat armor and below that covert armor.
Yes. I was suggesting covert.
I delete my search and search again.
For my part, Adam, a first question is to clarify whether the search program I requested from K&B is functionally the program asset, and second, whether that is presently available for my use.
I believe my intention was for it to be the program asset, or a program asset, I suppose, but that it is not likely to be ready just yet. Kato, let's go ahead and get the roll you're going to need for getting that covert armor. That's going to be 2d6 plus cool plus your relevant specialty, which in your case is, I think, going to be criminal underworld of +3.
Cool. Okay. The dice say 9.
Okay.
So 12 then with the specialty.
And then your cool, which is 0.
Cool is... Well, that's true. Yeah. I was going to protest, but you know what? We all know what this is.
So, let's see. You then can reduce the asset's price by 1, meaning that it's going to be 2 cash for some covert armor.
Excellent.
And with
let's say maybe for narrative flavor that whoever I've been asking around about augments, I see if they have a hookup on some covert armor as well. So that conversation is continuing as a gift to the GM.
Sure, I'm going to abstract and elide that for the time being, with the caveat that at any time it may become relevant to on-screen, as it were, action.
Such as the nature of the gift, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And the nature of prep as well. So, yes, covert armor for our listeners is discrete armor that is layered into and under clothing. It provides +1 tough defense while wearing it, and once per mission, it may reduce damage by 1 step on the damage track for free, at the cost of being able to benefit from the covert armor asset for the rest of the mission. It basically has to be repaired between missions if you reduce damage 1 step on the damage track at any point. Otherwise, while it's functioning, +1 to tough defense. I'm assuming that this is intended for use by Byrne. So
yes,
you can make a note of that on your sheet, Byrne.
Cool.
And that is Kato's prep.
I also think that the kid needs a panic button. In case we get separated, it'll go directly to me, so I know to burst in the door as need be.
Okay. Instead of classing that as an asset, I think we're just going to class that as prep and note that Byrne's personal prep can be used that way. if that is agreeable to all parties.
Sure.
And just to be totally clear, I didn't get prep for the mission because I got the armor instead.
Right,
Yeah.
you were doing the armor instead of getting prep.
Yep.
So,
Cool.
taking it in turn then, in a general sense, Cal, what are you doing as personal prep?
I am going to research everything I can about Hahi.
All right. Let's go ahead and get that roll from you first before I start saying things here. What specialty do you wish to apply to this research, Cal?
Let's do investigation. So that'll be +2.
And +3 from your clever for a total of +5. And that roll is 2d6 +5 versus 7.
Ooh, I got a 5 and a 6.
So 16, I believe.
Yes.
That is 4 total personal prep, which is a very impressive success there. So I am also, along with that, going to give you some information that may or may not be what you actually use the prep for, and that's fine. But just to kind of, give it the flavor and reward an extraordinary role, you look into Haru Hiryu, who you are pretty sure is Hahi, and a lot of what you can find about her paints her as, fail daughter doesn't roll off the tongue as well as fail son, but the daughter of Canopus Hiryu, a celebrated scientist who we talked about previously, she certainly has some academic credentials that are fairly impressive, and she's associated with a couple of businesses with vague names, sort of like how a company called like Synergistics Limited could do absolutely anything.
Mostly shadily.
There's no real... Sure. She's got a couple of connections there. She's not on any boards or anything, but she's like a consultant here or like a contractor there. As far as you can tell, mostly she just seems to hang out at her pretty posh home during the day and either go out to party or host a party at night. Not necessarily every night, but in terms of the information about what she does with her time, that seems to be about it. She's accounted to be a charming and attractive individual. She is not exactly a celebrity, but if you follow celebrity news, you'll see her name because well-known people attend her shindigs and are seen in her company.
Do I have I can infer from this, I suppose, that what we're invited to is one such party?
That would be a reasonable inference. There isn't sufficient specific information in publicly available reporting on her to know what kinds of parties and get-togethers she hosts when and where. I suppose one thing that you could turn up here that might be interesting is that she does not live particularly close to the address on the invitation. She is actually closer to the end of the station that you are spending the most time in, with the downtown end, than she is to the area where the party that you've been invited to, or that Byrne has been invited to, is supposed to take place.
Perfect.
And so that is all information that you have. It doesn't necessarily have to relate to how you use the prep that you gained, but that is sort of a upfront kind of thing.
Excellent. I'd also like to check bacon.
So checking bacon and kind of cross-referencing the kind of general area, no one directly associated with Haru Hiryu or with the particular venue for the shindig pops up, but in the general vicinity is sort of the last known workplace of a private security contractor who has more than a few complaints against her, named Conla Carter. Conla Carter.
Does it divulge the nature of those complaints?
There are a couple of representative examples which suggest that she tends to go out of her way to try to humiliate people that she detains or puts into custody.
Oh, fun.
So, a cop.
Well, in this case, loosely, because private security contractor, but
Sorry,
same difference.
Cop. With finger quotes for the listeners' benefit.
Rental cop.
So, I think that brings us then to Byrne's prep.
Yeah. I think there are sort of two related things that I would like to do.
Mm-hmm.
Or rather, two things that I would like to do which can be made to be related because I can ask the network about it. I would like to make friends with the network at the relevant place.
Mm-hmm.
And I would like to inquire with said friendly network what the sort of nature of the party is.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's actually a legit party or whether this is something staged purely for my benefit.
Okay. Let's go ahead and have you make a hacking roll.
Yep.
For this personal prep, and then we'll go from there.
That is a 10, becomes a 16. Sorry, becomes a 15.
10, 12, 15. You still get 4 prep. And the information that you are able to gather in the process here of making friends with this network is frustratingly unspecific, but it does reveal that this is unlikely to be a large, well-attended thing. The access logs don't give personal or specific information, but there is an access control on the building in question, and it only shows over the last, let's say the records reflect 6 Mondays, a maximum of like 10 individuals accessing the location, sometimes less. So it seems like you are unlikely to be the only person showing up, but it may not be a big crowd.
Okay. One last question. Does the invitation disclose a level of formality?
It does not.
Jammies.
Street rat chic.
I was going to say, yeah, the only clue you really get is the relative fanciness of the invitation and the fact that it calls it a soirée.
Jesus.
And I guess if you can divine anything from it being on the sort of like administrative end of the station on a Monday night, but that will be supposition at best. So, Ing, what is your personal prep going to be?
I would like to surveil the area ahead of time, using only 5 of my trend drones, assuming that there will be counter surveillance, and I'd like to show up with a full complement on the day of.
All right.
At the appointed time.
So it sounds to me like you are rolling your prep with the robotics specialty.
Yes, which I increased by 1 at the level
Okay.
up. So that is robotics now at 3.
Okay, so I believe it's going to be a total of +6 for you with clever and robotics there. So 2d6 plus 6.
Okay, so that is a total of 12.
Okay, which is going to be 2 total prep for you. Yeah, you have some, I will leave it relatively general information, and as you use the prep, we can decide if it needs to get more specified. But what you are looking at generally is something that's relatively rare on the downtown end of Grand Cross, and still not super common on the other end. A sort of event space building with an enclosed courtyard. You can't tell for sure from your drone surveillance if all, some, or none of the plants are alive, as opposed to, decorative fakes. But it's a fairly nice and well-kept kind of garden space with plenty of seating and tables. Mostly seems to be intended for large group interaction rather than like offering alcoves for like smaller groups or couples to slip away. And you don't get a good idea of the interior space on the other side of the courtyard from the entrance, but it is, as event spaces go, fairly cozy and looks to be 2 floors of publicly available space to those who come into this the courtyard. There are floors above that, but the windows are actually architecturally different and closer together, suggesting that there are multiple smaller rooms above rather than larger, more event spaces. So you come to the conclusion that the first 2 floors are probably the event space.
Okay, thank you.
Taken all together, it's a lot of space for 10-ish people, but would be kind of cramped for your average wedding.
Okay. All right. Well, I recall Bruv, Wiggles, Peggy, Mama, Toots. Good job, y'all. Feel like we got a good sense of the space.
Mm-hmm. And they did such good work.
Sorry, when you said recall, I thought you were like thinking fondly of them.
I mean, that too.
It works both ways.
I'm doing that currently.
If there's any time,
so are we all.
Oh, go ahead.
Right, I was going to say, I invite the listeners to imagine a slightly like Vaseline lensed kind of close up on Ing's face as he fondly recalls his drones. Maybe some kind of little synthesized flute music.
Brilliant. I love that. And if there's time at the end of all that, I collect some of Prolix's fur and make it into tiny little mustaches for Buddy and Tran. Because they are in witness protection and they just need all the help they can get.
I love this so much.
Incredible, Nick.
I feel
Please
like
describe the mustaches.
Oh God, they are so downy and shaped. They I mean, if you imagine like a really gruff gunslinger in the Old West with just kind of a mustache, just
like
that
a fucking
kind of
broom bristle.
Yes.
Perfect.
So you do have time to do this. Prolix will protest, saying, "Yet remarkably, appearance get him his projection, but can't do much to stop you."
I do take a little bit of engine oil and just kind of wax out one of, I'll say Buddy now has kind of a waxed and shaped mustache, whereas Trans is a little bit more, au natural.
Natural. Like, I don't think anything
You're
about
welcome.
this is au natural, but I love it.
Bravo.
Nature is a
So-
collaboration.
Capital P prep has been taken care of. Day of, is there any planning amongst yourselves or task apportionment or moving into place that we want to do? I suppose also if you want to make particular use of Bronwie's talents during this time, that would be something to bring up now. Otherwise, and I mean alongside, even if you do come up with something, she'll mostly concern herself with teaming up with Prolix to watch over 3.
I will ask Bronwyn
Which
what I
is
should
important.
wear.
Oh boy. When you ask
You're welcome,
Bronwyn what you should wear, she both lights up with excitement and gets a little misty that you have asked her for advice. The quality of her advice, however, I am going to leave to a roll of these dice.
Before you get too far ahead, I'm going to note that Cal is lingering in the vicinity of this conversation while trying not to look interested. I'll allow Brown
Your
to take
Ogvert
that and
goes
run
off.
with it.
Okay. Corralling her excitement and sort of welling of emotion at this, Bronwyn gives you sort of the critical eye of an aspiring fashionista, and says, well, we're going to want to make sure it works with the low profile armor that Kato is supplying, so we're going to keep with kind of the baggy look, I think, but oh, and is tapping away on her tablet computer and says, yeah, I don't think I've seen you wear anything that could be described as slacks yet, but the good news is that Rumi is in right now, and we're going to get you a nice bright color for the runner on the seam, and we're going to get you a sort of casual, non-tailored sport coat that you can wear your favorite t-shirt under. It'll be sort of a fun mix of casual and formal. It'll show that you're aware of the expectations for the evening, but choosing to play with them a little bit. It'll make you seem very confident and in control. And she's already sort of like pulling up addresses for where she can go thrifting for this sort of thing.
I started to walk away at the reference of bright colors.
It's been a while since I've worn much color.
She sort of nods and she says, well, you have a fairly defined aesthetic that I think does pretty well without it, but you don't want to go too much as yourself for something that might be a trap. So we can make use of that. And she kind of looks at you discerningly and goes, I think it'll be easier to find the larger sizes too, which seems to suit you just fine. I'll be back in a jiffy if you don't want to come along for trying things on. She makes it into a question.
If this is supposed to actually fit, I should probably come along. Plus, we've alienated the officer, and that's a benefit itself.
She chuckles a little nervously, but also with some genuine humor, and gives you a broad smile and says, I don't think this will take too long. There's a lot of good secondhand stores in the vicinity of Jeepole, so I think we can find you exactly what we need. And takes you on a brief shopping trip.
I text Kato to announce that I'm going out with Bronwyn. Clothes shopping.
You see. I assume we have some way of seeing when someone is typing. You see that I start typing, then stop, then start typing, then stop a few times, and then you get the jankiest thumbs up ASCII yet. The thumb looks broken, but you can tell it's still supposed to go up.
I remove the 6 deliberately placed characters that are fucking it up and send it back to you.
You get back 2 thumbs up, one of which is perfect and the other of which is even worse than the original one.
I think that this continues just as a patter on the trip. Probably interspersed with pictures of me in these outfits that I give you grave threats if you share them.
Locked down, secret, absolutely. But looking good.
And you know what? It's not a lie. Probably not really either Kato's or Byrne's specific taste in fashion, but in terms of what's relatively current, and in terms of fit, these outfits come off pretty well. You get some dark, mostly straight leg slacks with sort of like a pale, kind of teal runner down the exterior seams, and a sort of deliberately a little shapeless and sort of baggy sport coat that has accents in a matching color.
I mean, I think it's going to be very hard to get something that has broad enough shoulders for me that is not inherently at least a little bit baggy on my described as like a person ironed flat frame.
Indeed. And that suits Bronway's plans for you just fine. And then she leaves it to your discretion to wear like a tee or a button up or something underneath it. Just kind of
that's so generous
however
of her
you
to
want to do
assume
it.
that I have a button up.
Well, she included t-shirts as
Yeah,
well.
no, that is so generous of you speaking as her to assume that Gremlin
Sure.
extraordinaire here has a button up.
Yeah, lots of people have like one in their closet, so she didn't want to cast aspersions. In any case, you end up looking like you have deliberately put together, a party outfit that makes a statement, and with plenty of time to spare in the day, to allow you to settle into it, fit the armor underneath, and still make the soirée. If not moment of, then fashionably late. Is there anything else urgent that needs to get done before that point?
I tell K&B I'm going to the party. This is probably also an announcement that I have, 1, come into possession of Canopus.drs, 2, received the invitation related thereto, and 3, relaying to her the probable identity of Hahi.
You get in reply an elaborate series of emoji that, taken together, convey excitement, surprise, trepidation, and envy.
I convey to K&B that I will give a full report, and if you do not hear from me tomorrow, or rather within 3 days, assume that shit has gone very wrong.
And there is some text in the reply, but its contents are probably better conveyed by the small but densely elaborate ASCII art of the sort of classic yellow smiley used in most emoticon, biting its nails.
I do the same, but with Ramirez.
Ramirez's tone can best be described as doleful, which is not super unusual.
I do let him, I do inform him that this is likely connected to the mysterious tech, and don't bring him up to speed on the information I've learned about the name, but mention that the tech remains contained, leads soon to follow. If intervention is needed, overlook my mark.
All right. And so after / overlapping with some of this, Byrne and Cal will be, I guess it's up to you together or separately, using transit to traverse most of the length of the station to head to the venue indicated on the invitation.
I will insist on traveling together.
All right.
And I show up snappier and dressed than expected.
This is me vocalizing my excitement, listeners. So
I don't make a break for the basement when you insist that we travel together. Instead, I inquire as to the means. I am not getting on your bike.
Doesn't really work with 2 riders.
That is one of several considerations, not the chief among them.
It's not my preference. I like motorcycles, but they wouldn't give me one.
Putt-putt for a rented cop.
I ignore the barb and brush off the shoulder of my jacket. Straighten my tie a bit.
Do the two of you then take the metro?
Presumably, yes.
All right.
I have had to physically resist the urge to take a prom picture.
That would be a very poor decision for living, yes.
I'm quite aware. Doesn't mean I didn't want to.
So
Today I
having-
chose life.
Since so Kato, your prep was furnishing the covert armor. Ing, I assume that you were going to be providing exterior support here. So probably not like traveling with them, but roughly adjacent to their time and means, to be on the appropriate part of the station.
I think I ask if I can come along to wherever Ing is going to be monitoring and running the drones from. Might be safer and more enjoyable with two.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, when I'm paying attention to the drones, I'm not really paying attention to my surroundings. And
I bring the gun that Cal gave me, which no longer feels quite as foreign in my hands.
Brief consultation in character with the other characters. Would it be useful if I had a drone with the audio equipment present at the meeting? Or would that just bring additional complications that we don't want to need?
What kind of audio equipment? Recording? Making noise? Distractions?
Yeah, recording. So listening in.
Probably would be helpful. There might be
Mama
things
has
that we
some.
won't be able to catch on our own. There could be stuff that's incriminating, stuff that's revealing. I'm for it.
Mama's not stealthy, but I could either send her in ahead of time, or you could smuggle her in.
I open my jacket.
I hand over Mama.
For the listener, what is the nature of Mama?
Mini
Mama is a
quadrone.
quadrone equipped with recording equipment that we used in the first mission.
Yeah.
Yep.
It is
Quadrone
possible.
like the size of a small pizza box, as opposed to the ones that are like,
Mhm.
like a sandwich board. I assume.
Yeah, I think even very small. So it's a mini quadrone,
Okay,
very so small,
Miniaturized.
compact.
Got
Part
it.
of the
Compact?
swarm.
Fits in Cal's coat.
The sort of thing that a cat would attack on sight.
Yes. Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And so the particularly if I'm envisioning the structure of Cal's jacket correctly, this is a drone that could, with assistance from Cal, sort of be positioned on her back underneath her sort of structured jacket. That said, Mama is the bulkier of the mini quad drones because of the additional hardware, which kind of protrudes awkwardly into the small of your back. You won't want to sit down. Is sort of the takeaway here. If there is any kind of like search procedure going in, it will be very hard to conceal the drone.
Yeah, in which case I'll just plan to dismiss the drone.
Sure. So, the two pairs of you approach the venue, the area of the venue for the
Given Mama
soiree.
and the, at least on my end, desire to not be personally associated with a cop, I suggest that I go in first and you see whether there is a search procedure going on and deal with Mama accordingly.
I will point out, sort of out of character consideration, that Cal is very likely to only be able to get in as your guest.
I was hoping you weren't going to point that out at him.
That's fair. That's a reasonable hope. So, logistics will have to sort of be determined as the situation is surveyed. But as you are sort of arriving at the station and disembarking from the metro, Cal, you will get a message from Ramirez that says, "Thought you'd want to know the APB the other night. named Lulu Sarasti, G-Pol is putting it out that it was a more typical kind of confrontation to college campuses. You can almost hear the wry tone of Ramirez's voice there. But the student alleges that it was a theft, that some folks stole something from her, that she was moving to a lab. PSS is not treating it as a robbery. Raised my eyebrows, thought you'd want to know.
I send the skeptical looking emoji with the monocle.
The much to consider emoji. Yeah.
Yes. And respond with, I'll follow up with her once I have returned from this. And then I put soirée in quotation marks.
Sure. So a brief distraction as you are completing your trip here. Anything last minute to straighten out before you arrive at the gate, a fashionable half hour after the appointed time?
I will activate my holographic projection armor.
All right. That is one prep, leaving you, I believe, with 3.
3. And I'm going to, instead of doing like a particular image this time and keeping with the fancier attire, it's going to be blurring my appearance, but it'll be multifaceted. That is somehow reminiscent of diamonds, with the ghost of like a Greek sculpture underneath as a face.
Oh, I like that a lot. Excellent.
For my part, my laughing kid digital image is set up to sort of slowly shift over the course of the party between sort of composites of never fewer than 3 other guests.
Oh, fun.
So it looks like a real person,
like
but never quite the same. For, of course,
I like that
maximum fuckery.
Delightful.
Okay. So you approach the address, and it's probably not actually wrought iron, but it is a pretty convincing facsimile. There is very little wrought iron on Grand Cross. A reasonable facsimile of wrought iron gate sort of set into an arch that is sort of projecting a stylized image of like English ivy sort of twining around it. On the other side, you can see the courtyard space that Ing had scouted out, and there is a sort of bored-looking security guard, not the bacon target in question, looking, in your direction as you walk up, and sort of gestures again with a oozing boredom and says, "Do you have an invitation?"
Yeah.
Can I see it?
I would like to set things up so that, or rather, what form do I actually have this invitation?
It is as an image attachment.
Okay.
To the message that it was sent with.
Okay, I'll pull up the image.
Okay. Yeah, you pull up the image, and he sort of peers at it for a moment, and then glances at you and down at his little like PDA device, and is like, looks between you and Cal and goes, "Yeah, all right," and pushes a button. The gate. You hear the lock disengage, and he gestures for you to enter, already ignoring you. Assuming that you enter, you find yourself in a nicely appointed courtyard where the turf and the sort of bordering hedges and grasses around other features are artificial, but the trees and flowers and things do seem to be actual factual plants. The area is enclosed by a fairly nondescript wall with some very lightly animated botanical projection decorations. But the building on the opposite side is at least decorated to look like a kind of classic red brick, and has, again, at least mocked up to look like painted wooden doors and shutters on some of the windows. Doors in this case being a plural because double door into the space. Those are currently standing open. It would appear that the seating is mostly in the courtyard, but refreshments are inside. Looking around, there are only a few people in evidence. You can see to your right as you enter a largish fellow with kind of shaved sides and then the top pulled into sort of a high ponytail, his dark hair. He is chatting animatedly with a wiry looking fellow who is aggressively nondescript, at least from behind. You can see certainly that there's movement inside the building. No one particularly takes note of your entrance immediately, at least. Very briefly, I am going to check in and establish the presence and location of our other two, Ing and Kato. Or I guess since you're on operation, I should use your crime names, Ohm and Hecate. You are sort of in position a little bit before all of this is taking place. The position in question is a little bit up to you if you prefer to be at like an alleyway or a cafe or like maybe a top rooftop metro station or something. Wherever you are, you've sort of ensconced yourselves, relatively casually and, can be the arbiters of exactly what you're doing, but my assumption would be that Ohm is maintaining a loose surveillance with some drones, and Hecate is playing lookout. Where specifically would you like to have set up, and are you doing anything additional at this stage?
I was going to suggest in and out of character, nearby rooftop. That way drones could return to us unobtrusively. In a cafe, they might draw more attention.
True. I like it.
So publicly accessible rooftops are actually mostly cafes. But
how ironic.
Rip. It's also a feature of this part of town, a little more parkland and a lot of places for commuters and station government officials to like get outdoors and, keep each other company. That said,
I
there
have a
are
beverage in a cup from the cafe downstairs, and there's another cup that is empty. I put it in front of Ing and say, "Vibes."
Vibes.
That's very cute.
That warms my heart.
Mm-hmm.
I raise it in salutation and then put it back down on the teacup.
Love that. Meantime, Ohm's drones are sort of doing more loose surveillance unless there's something specific you wish to accomplish early on here, in which case just let me know.
I'm looking out, so if I don't see anything troubling or untoward immediately, then I'm just enjoying a beverage and sharing some vibes.
Yeah, I'd like to spread the drones out around the building in question.
All right.
The Soirée building, that is.
Excellent. The good news is that there are only a few other customers this particular location, none paying particularly close attention to you. This is after quitting time on a Monday evening. People are not like staying out, and the ones who are doing some heavy drinking rather than, coming to cafes. So, heading back into our soiree, I described everything to you a moment ago as it stood when you entered and the gate closed behind you. How are we proceeding?
I've attached myself to Byrne's right shoulder, just behind him.
We're proceeding.
All right.
I wish listeners could have heard the look of frustration that just then.
So then, Matchstick, I suppose, the crime name, Are you proceeding towards the people in the courtyard who are chatting, or indoors, or in another manner?
Do I see Ms. Hear-You?
Not in the courtyard, and not through the open doorway currently.
Then I think... So, which do I have the more limited view of to suss whether she might be there or elsewhere?
It's a fairly open courtyard. Unless she is deliberately hiding, she's probably indoors.
Okay. Then, ignore the courtyard.
All right. Heading on toward the open door, you sort of glance in ahead of yourself as you go. There are refreshments, seemingly fairly nice ones, on a table covered in a white tablecloth, just sort of like not quite straight through the door on the opposite wall, just a little off to one side. There's a fair bit of table space, both seated and standing, but there are only another 4 people in the space. You can pretty quickly surmise that one of the people in this building is Haru. It is a little odd. She is wearing a fairly fancy looking kind of glossy drapey sort of like evening blouse with a less sort of pronouncedly formal skirt and a lab coat. She has a straight dark hair and a hime cut, and is holding a glass of something as she talks to a decidedly less society-looking person. The person she's talking to is of slightly uncertain height because they are sort of hunching in a pronounced fashion, seemingly not their everyday comfort posture, but rather a response you intuit to being in an open space. They have striking and messy tricolor hair. Left side of the head is white, middle of the head is black, the right side of the head is a sort of ginger orangey color, and not so uncommon, but certainly not an everyday sight either. They have matching cat ear augments rising from their head. This person that Haru is talking to is dressed in what Matchstick will instinctively identify as reclusive hacker garb, sort of mostly monochrome, very functional, ill-fitting, and in dark colors. You can't immediately overhear the conversation. Haru has a fairly animated look, and the person that she is talking to has a slightly hunted expression.
Remind me if we had a plan for Mama leaving the jacket.
Nothing particular.
Sure didn't.
Yeah, just hanging out, recording conversations.
Yeah, you have fun with that. I'm off to go talk to her.
Well, and I think you just said that if there was a good time to release her from the jacket so she could chill and be hidden and record stuff, then you would do that. But
yeah,
I think
okay.
we got more specific.
Yeah,
presumably the recording equipment works even underneath the jacket.
Mm-hmm. Where Mama will remain for now because I think a quad drone would attract a ton of attention in this setting. So I remain at Byrne's right shoulder.
Mm-hmm. Byrne, you approach Haru, and you see her note you approaching and sort of finish talking to the almost certainly a hacker
cat
that she's speaking to. And as you approach, you catch just the tail end of what she's saying, which is, and that's why we love having you around, Allie. Allie, for their part, sort of...
It's an alley cat.
grimaces and nods and then glances in Byrne's direction and sort of stands up a little straighter while also giving you a very sort of narrowed glance, but does not say anything. Haru, for her part, turns to greet you. Welcome, welcome. You must be Matchstick. And she sort of looks over your right shoulder at Cal and goes, wait, no, I know, and looks at Allie, and Allie says, Reaper.
Do I recognize the name?
Nope.
As the lady said, Matchstick.
Haru very graciously says, I'm so glad that both of you could join us.
Well, with an invitation like that, it's hard to refuse.
I will admit, I was hoping to make it hard to refuse. You see,
Yes, blackmail is very effective.
these, it was not intended so much as blackmail as, well, a reason for you to come see me.
Do you salt all the networks with your father's life story?
Oh, well, just some corporate ones that, well, Allie here, and gestures to her companion, has helped me seed the directory in some places that, well, anyone looking there without permission is of interest to me. Allie, for her part, gets a thoughtful look on her face.
Let's be direct then. What sort of interest? Or, put another way, to what degree shall I assume this all is a threat?
She furrows her brow and she says, I suppose that depends a little on, well, you and a little on me. I hope that we can make none of it a threat. I certainly don't want you to go talking to folks about our conversations here tonight, and if it looks like you're going to, then threats may be in order, but I was hoping that we could perhaps make common cause. I understand that you may be, well, you may react in a mercenary fashion about it, which is perfectly fair. Sort of glances over your shoulder at Cal.
I cross my arms.
She gives a tight-lipped smile as she continues. But my assumption is that anyone triggering my little invitation is going to have some interest in digging deeper on some of what my father was working on. She monitors your reaction, seemingly looking for, well, something.
Flat affect, 2-second pause, carry on gesture.
Okay. She kind of sighs a little bit and says, I do understand. Allie here was quite difficult to, bring in at first as well. And Allie, for her part, takes the opportunity to say, you aren't my mother. And give you a little bit of a glare.
I will look from Allie to Haru, nod, roll my eyes, and make the same glance at Cal. Can I roll hacking to be able to directly text Reaper in some fashion?
Interesting.
Or otherwise directly connect with in text form?
I suppose so. You can go ahead and roll.
Ooh. Boxcars.
Oh boy, that's a pretty high number, isn't it?
18. Or not, 19 given use of clever.
So yeah, you have now a, sort of direct and secure individual channel.
As you can see, I understand overzealous would-be parentals.
So you send your message, and Allie sort of blinks twice and sends back, I wouldn't know anything about that, but you're not my mother.
Okay.
At about this point, then, Haru seems to have reached something of a decision, perhaps driven by impatience with, the overall caginess of paranoid hackers, something she seems to have some experience with that has not necessarily given her the appropriate amount of patience. She says,
she should be used to this shit.
that may very well be the root of the problem. But she sort of visibly composes herself and says, "These Monday evenings are an effort at information sharing and cooperation."
So it's catching the weekend's haul and blackmailing them.
I certainly don't have any scruples about blackmail when I feel it's necessary, but when possible, I prefer willing cooperation.
The fact of the invitation, with my name on it, is entirely sufficient to constitute a very high-level personal threat, madam.
She nods slowly and says, "I see. Well, in that case, I shall be..."
What do you want from me?
Yes, very direct.
Been fucking trying.
She, without any particular change of expression, says, "I want your help finding out what actually happened to my father and what exactly it is that his death was covering up for. I have some ideas. We've been looking into it for a little while informally. I would like this to proceed greatly and exclusively in secret. These little meetings are innocuous enough, and we try not to say anything too incriminating, but, well, that's where, as you point out, the blackmail comes in when necessary. I cultivate a frivolous public persona, and
Successfully.
frankly, fair enough. This is the only thing that I particularly do that doesn't fit into it, but I would like to know what the cartel is doing that took my dad from me. People who find the directory are typically people who are capable of helping me." She gestures at you, gestures at Allie, and then looks over Cal's shoulder and says, "Introductions are in order. Oh, no, what happened to you?" And turning, you see a young woman, by appearances, South Asian, with a constellation of bruises, fairly recent ones, around her face and neck, a split lip, and some small lacerations on one cheek. She is wearing a pretty grim expression, and as she comes up, she responds to Haru's question with, "What happened is I lost it." Haru swears in a language that is not English.
Is it one I know?
I was about to go check. All right.
I shift my weight and lightly nudge the back of Byrne's shoulder.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to rule that not a language that you know,
Okay.
though you will recognize it as belonging to East Asia.
All right.
And yes, you are suitably nudged.
Sure am.
The newcomer sort of moves over toward Haru's side of this little growing gathering and says, "Newcomers, can we trust them?" To which Haru replies with an elaborate shrug and a bit of a look that says, "What do you think?" To which the newcomer sort of just shakes her head and says, "Well,
I assume you
it's
two
written
were
all over
once
my
a caught
face."
fish?
The newcomer looks at Haru and goes, "This is..." Looks back at you and says, "No, I am a friend of Ali's. I came to this with her and was interested. I want to get to the bottom of this. And I thought I had a lead. Then 3 people jumped me in an alley near the JBD and took my lead from me. The station security, whoever they're working with, the campus people, won't take me seriously. They don't even believe that anything was stolen. Fuckers."
Fuckers. I echo.
She gives you an appreciative nod.
Your augvert goes off. I am rolling my eyes as that happens.
So if you've seen tweened animation, where it's just like a very unnaturally even pace of movement from one point to another, that is the way that the newcomer's gaze shifts from where Cal's like holographically projected face is to the arm with the augvert going off. And her face goes through a complex sequence of reactions ending in a grimace.
Matchstick has a great sense of humor, and he's capable of pulling off a lot remotely, it seems.
My expression
Yes.
throughout this does not change one fucking iota.
After the line from Cal there, Allie just giggles until she snorts, sort of like looking like she may be about to fall over. Haru keeps a relatively even expression through all of this. And
may I inquire
then,
as to the nature of the lead? Keeping in mind, of course, that I can't actually be trusted.
The newcomer sort of chuckles, and Haru gives her sort of a small but not secretive nod. The newcomer sort of glances back at the now silent once more augvert, and then sort of takes a deep breath and says, "All right, well, I think that you already know. My name is Lulu. I study at Jupol, and I had a piece of, I guess you could call it out-of-place technology. I had found it on, well, I didn't find it myself.
It was found.
Rigel did. And I was bringing it to share with one of my professors, robotics at the university, Professor Levy. Well, okay, he's not a professor. In any case, I work with him. I call him Professor Levy. Whatever. I was bringing this piece of technology to Mr. Levy when I was attacked and it was taken. She gestures at the augvert. The PSS have filed it as some sort of other attack and refused to report the stolen item. I don't really know what it was. A piece of plastic and metal with unusual contours and colors that we could not find any specific use for, but that showed a current and a wireless signal.
I will look at Haru and ask, and is Mr. Levy assisting with this project?
Haru doesn't laugh like I just laughed, but Haru does laugh.
Is it more of an ho?
She doesn't give a Hime laugh, no. It's bitterer than that. She goes, No, he's not.
Good. honestly.
Had I known how dangerous it would be, I would not have put Lulu up to it. We were theorizing that perhaps, if she got in Levy's good enough graces, she could even be a bit of a mole. To which Lulu replies, "It was my idea. I was perfectly willing to do it. I still am, if we can still get me in his good enough graces." And Haru makes an equivocating gesture.
Your attackers, did you get a look at them?
Oh, I got a great look at their holographic projection armor. You won't find that in the PSS report either. It's just kaleidoscopic noise, nothing quite so artful as your own.
That is still useful.
Well, I'm glad. If I can ask a rude question, what is a PSS associate, I assume, from your Ogvert doing here?
A concerned citizen.
Aren't
What
we
he
all?
said.
Haru does do a moderate version of the Hime laugh at this, which I will attempt to get a little further from the mic before I do. She goes, and then says, yes, concerned citizens all. But this is promising. If we have, and she pauses and says, I don't want to presume, but if we have the possibility of an in with PSS, as well as the combined hacking talents of those present, and a in with Kova Levy, we might be able to find some real information here. She sort of looks consideringly at the two newcomers.
Before we get too far,
Mhm.
What's in it for me other than an absence of blackmail? I am busy trying to keep
thoughtful.
myself fed and housed, and in occasional classes.
This does seem to bring Haru up a little short, but she looks thoughtful and she says, well, I'm assuming that, unearthing cartel secrets is, its own reward, but perhaps not as material a one as you might hope for.
To the degree that, it keeps me not dying. They're kind of notoriously jealous of their secrets.
You raise a good point. I have some means, but it is not unmonitored. So I have trouble sometimes giving direct material rewards, but given a little bit of time, I could try to make your situation less precarious and more comfortable by other means. I know better, I think, than to suggest that I simply provide you with one of my own locations and supplies. I imagine you would turn that down for security and paranoia reasons. Understandable. We're all here doing things that could be dangerous. But failing that more direct route, I do have some resources at my means, and if we begin to cooperate successfully, I will have had some time to maneuver them into a position where you could benefit from them. If this becomes a closer relationship, I am not opposed to hiring you in a formal but fictitious capacity. I have the ability to put you on payroll as something plausible, if that interests you.
I think those... The fact of recompense is sufficient. At least as a demonstration of good graces and not a raw exercise of power.
Her expression takes on a surprisingly serious and somber cast, and she says, let me be clear. I do intend to use the tools at my disposal to find out what happened to my father.
Of
But
course.
my problems with the cartel could be summed up in the phrase raw exercise of power, and I at least attempt to differentiate myself from them.
Well, here we are.
She takes a deep breath and says, yes, no, of course. And then she sort of looks around and says, I do have a few other people I need to speak to before they decide to be on their way. Feel free to continue your conversations
I have
with Ali
2
and Lulu.
points before you move on.
Of course.
One, a shockingly efficient way of transferring money is allowing oneself to be hacked.
She looks thoughtful and says,
It
"It's
would,
on
of
the
course,
table."
be under controlled circumstances, but the public need not know that. 2,
Certainly.
the use of my name in any public fashion is an immediate way to get me to stop cooperating.
That is very good to know. And
Please just refer to me
you
as
have my
Matchstick. Thank you.
you have my word that will be how I address you. Matchstick.
And I look at Reaper in the same statement.
She sort of glances at Haru, glances at you, and goes, "What, me? Oh, of course." She sort of gestures to herself like, "What would I do?" and goes, "Of course, Matchstick."
Thank you.
She nods nervously and kind of looks at you consideringly, but not with any hostility, just as though she's trying to figure you out.
Good luck to everyone. I don't say that out loud.
Sure. Haru says, "I'll be here for a while, but not everyone will, so
Oh, of course.
you know,
By all
help
means,
yourself to the
go
refreshments." And
mingle with the rest of the fish.
she gives you a gracious nod and is on her way out to the courtyard.
Before she leaves, I say, Haru, for what it's worth, money works for me too, but it seems the information that which we are both in search of is somehow related.
She gives you a nod and says, "Good to know." And, well, thank you for dealing in good faith. And moves on.
I'll make hacker small talk with Ali.
This proves both easy and hard in that Ali does do hacker small talk in exactly the way that you would expect, but sort of stochastically disconnected. She has a tendency to hop around unpredictably from topic to topic in sort of a unique to her free association web.
Delightful.
She
I
does. You go ahead.
I am slightly fishing for information as to her style and approach to things. Whether she is, and the means by which she was actively monitoring the network to do the command line trick.
Yeah, so it takes a little bit of assembly, but she seems to particularly specialize in backdoors, shortcuts, like unmonitored access. You know, the way that you and others usually gain access to systems is by, you know, working through and around and in the vulnerabilities of the access that is supposed to be there.
Yep.
She seems to have a particular enthusiasm for and seemingly knack for just wrenching open new points of access where they were never intended to exist.
I offer to trade programs for some example of that type of utility.
This offer is met with a deep and rapid blush, followed by a mumbled, "Yeah, sure, okay, maybe sometime soon."
Cool. You are obviously free to say no, trade secrets and all. But
She nods and says, "No, I like learning. I like sharing. It's just..." and trails off.
I quirk an eyebrow at that and just sort of let it hang.
She sort of shakes her head and jumps to talking about one of the names that you used when asked who is intruder in that system. And, during this conversation, Cal, anything in particular that you would like to be doing?
Is Lulu still hanging around?
Yeah, certainly if you engage her in conversation, she won't wander off.
I'll do just that.
Mhm.
I'll ask if there's any other information she feels comfortable giving me. And allude to the fact that there are certain non-PSS entities that are aware it wasn't a robbery.
Mm-hmm. She sort of nods morosely and sort of says, "Yes, well, I assume as much, that somebody had to be giving them orders to not listen to my actual testimony, but I have had good luck so far in trusting the people that Haru brings around, so I'm going to go out on a limb here. The fact that I was targeted for the technology is not, I don't think, up for debate. It seems like the people who attacked me were probably, if not directly employed by cartel players, then funded by them. They had matching sophisticated equipment, and they knew what they were looking for. Unfortunately, they were too professional to let me see anything really about them, or to speak to each other while I was in earshot. But that in and of itself says something, I think.
What equipment do you recall them having?
Well, the holographic projection armor, and, well, they seemed to be able to communicate directly. They responded as though speaking without speaking, which implies they weren't simply using text, but had maybe some sort of sub-vocalization. It's possible. If they were androids, which is also possible, then that would even, require less in the way of specific communication. They were careful not to use anything other than fists in their attack, so that it wouldn't seem like they were anybody but drunks, I suppose. And I think they probably had some way of monitoring me as well, because areas around the JDB are almost entirely monitored. There are only a few places where they could get away with this attack without leaving some kind of evidence or attracting witnesses, and they waited for me to traverse one of those small stretches in order to ambush me.
Would I know that the PSS is responsible for monitoring those cams, or would I know who has the information?
It is certainly PSS. So a number of people would be responsible for, sort of the degree of real-time monitoring that goes on, and most PSS personnel could get permission to review those logs and tapes, though not everybody has standing permission.
Another question is that I'm sure this is something that Cal knows, but what is IMX's relation to the cartel?
IMX isn't a cartel member, but they have had several sort of high-profile transactions, and if you were to search into it, like personnel in common with Ogremok, which is a cartel corporation. So at the very least, they seem to be cozy with the cartel.
Got it. And would the equipment described in terms of direct communications or the holographic projection armor resonate with either of those entities, IMX or Ogremok?
It's not conclusive association, but it is the kind of thing that Ogremok would probably have on hand as like the security oriented heavy hitters of the cartel. Ogremok is famous for supplying station security with its automated security drones and more traditional robots. But as you work in security, that they also do handle a lot of equipment and provision, even for security forces that aren't directly associated with them.
So this sounds a lot more like Ogremok by way of IMX as opposed to Lot Zero.
Yeah, if the hypothesis that the assailants could have all or some been androids, then there could be some overlap there, but it may then even not be like official, in that people's affiliations above and below the law, can sometimes be a little disconnected from one another.
Gotcha. Okay. So, I'm sorry this happened to you.
She gives a wry smile and she says, it is nice to hear that from someone even a little associated with PSS. I don't think anyone else really had that attitude.
You should know that there's been purportedly a high presence of IMX at PSS headquarters.
She nods slowly as though expecting you to go on.
So I suspect maybe Ogremok might be the particular cartel members we're looking for in this.
She nods a little more certainly and says, I suppose that would make sense. I suppose we always knew we would run afoul of the cartel in this project. I was hoping that wouldn't be running afoul of their fists and feet, but she shrugs. I would accept a beating if I would be able to keep the device, but, well, no use in wishing. They've got it back now.
It's unfortunate. There's been a lot of reports of strange devices on campus.
She sort of tilts her head. This is news to me. I suppose then it may not have been quite so singular a thing I was bringing to Kovalevi. She takes a deep breath and sort of shakes it off a little bit and says, I will just try to be a little happy that I am not hurt worse. And kind of nods to herself and says, well, certainly come and find me if you wish to. I have some other people to check in with who would be worried about me. And sort of tries to make a graceful exit, but has left the door open to being tracked down a little later if you stay.
Mm-hmm. I let her depart with the encouragement to take care of herself and maybe stick to the east exit.
She gives you a wry smile and a nod and is off. I would like to, yes.
2 further things with Reaper. One, I inquire whether there's anyone else here that I ought to meet. And 2, I should have inquired earlier with Hahi that I work often with a small cadre of others. And would it be permissible to bring them up to speed on things?
So, second bit first. She is pretty casual about, if you trust them enough to tell them about it, then they can probably be brought up to speed. I would let Haru know that you're doing so, but they were invited, technically, after all. So
I was the only one physically present at the exfiltration, so...
She nods and says, but the invitation invited you and friends.
And given that it was cloaked in such mystery, we were treating it as another op.
She nods. Reasonable. Very reasonable. Probably more people should be as cautious. And she then moves into answering the first question and says, hey, you've met Lulu and me and Haru. You get an idea exactly. Manaya, and she gestures towards the courtyard, is a radio DJ, and Rigel is a parkour guy who hangs out in chat rooms. Some of us are professionals and covert operatives and such, and others are enthusiasts. It takes all sorts, and having eyes everywhere helps. We're going to find them.
Mm-hmm.
She gives you a firm nod at that.
I'll return it.
She seems pleased. Hecate, we have left you at this cafe for quite a while we went through some conversation. You do have the drone surveillance. It is seemingly pretty blessedly uneventful in terms of, sort of look out over the venue. And, Hecate, people come and go, and you do sort of play up some cover, here and there. But there isn't anything particularly worrisome for the stretch covered here. So anything in particular you want to do at the time?
It's a real relief that these stakeouts continue to be boring. Last time actually wasn't that boring, though. I met the most fascinating person.
You did.
You hear a voice from over your shoulder go, "Who is that?"
I do in fact look.
It is Apatia.
And she shall appear.
As an aside to the listeners, I was genuinely planning on having her be the complication, so this was just serendipitous. Continue.
Chef's kiss.
I mean, we've established we're serving vibes on this room, so it makes sense that we're vibing. Actually, well, you, hi.
Hello. And she just pulls up a chair very casually and sits down. She has a very tall cup of something that smells like the word coffee in capital letters. And she sort of
Bestow my heart.
she sort of glances over at Hecate and then over at Omen and says, "Wait a minute. I've met both of you. I didn't know you know each other. Well, isn't this just Providence?"
To be perfectly clear, is this Providence or did I conjure you in some way?
Oh, well, I was in the neighborhood inspecting some government records, totally legally, I promise. And happened to decide on some coffee, and when I headed up here, I saw, well, I was facing more towards you, gestures at Hecate, and says, so I recognized you and came over this way, and then coming around, I saw that I have also, I don't know that we were introduced, but met this gentle person previously as well, and so here we are, and gives you a beaming, partially chrome smile.
Adorable.
Well, you know what they say. It's a small orbital space station.
She nods very seriously and she goes, people really underestimate the degree to which it's quite small. I mean, there are a lot of people, but we don't live in that much space. It's remarkable, really, and wonderful most of the time. Like now. And then she kind of looks to one side and goes, other times, it's mostly good. Big, long sip of coffee.
I don't
In any
believe that
case-
hell is other people, but other people, some of them, are hell.
Pleasure to meet you. Oh, sorry.
No, I was just saying she nodded.
Had she been asking about my name indirectly, or did I misinterpret that?
She said what she said, and man, she
Fair.
just sometimes isn't very clear.
Right. In any case, yeah, fancy running into you. It's nice that you've met each other. I must say that I agree. You are a fascinating person.
She nods and says, I've been told that, and it's not something I actively try to do, but I think I try to do things that most people don't, and so that tends to make me interesting to them. And she sort of turns towards you. Now, did you, in fact, offer your name just now, or were you sort of backtracking on that?
I did offer my name, and given the
Okay.
context, and that we might, if I give my code name, then that will complicate things. So
Yeah, no. And so she kind of catches up to that, and she says, and Ing, it's a pleasure to meet you. I am Apatia. This is quite a lovely, I suppose, just having a nice afternoon here. I didn't know that, well, I suppose I know some androids, but it didn't seem like you had the hardware for tea or coffee.
I don't. I come here to absorb the ambiance and to accompany my biological friends. Just seems polite to come equipped, and I hold the teacup up empty, so such as it is.
Mm-hmm. She nods, seeming to understand. She says, yes, well, the company is a lot of the point, I suppose, and that's very gracious of you. I certainly appreciate your company, though, I suppose, and she kind of flicks one of her very prominent augments on the back of her head, and she says, I might be a little less flesh and blood than most, though she looks over at Cato and says, still more than some.
Yeah, I'm actually a little surprised that I'm one of the biological friends, but, everything's relative.
She nods and she says, very, 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 very true.
I toast with the last of my own beverage. Say, well, to friendship and to Providence, I guess.
She says, here. I don't often run into people I see on the downtown side up here. I seem to get back and forth more than a lot of folks do. Just this cafe or any particular business bring it? I mean, not to be too nosy. No, I am nosy, but I'm not trying to be, I suppose, is what I'm getting at.
What we're doing is legal as well.
So convincing.
She nods.
I say it with a wistful, almost regretful tone.
She nods. It comes off to you in this moment as morose, but you may just be projecting a little bit. And she says, right, no, I mean, it's not like everybody I run into on a rooftop is looking for dreamers.
Looking for what?
Oh, just a turn of phrase. Me and a few associates have started to use I guess they'd kind of be analogous to cryptids, but for the space station, the mysterious, inexplicable, hostile machines that people report seeing in basements and back alleys.
Like a pasta, but creepy.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of creepypasta about them.
Which
I don't know where the
basements and
name
which back
Dreamers
alleys?
came from. Oh well, that's the trick, right? Everybody on the no, hang on, I misspoke. Yeah, everybody in the chat rooms has their own theories about how you can tell where one is going to appear next. It's like people back on Earth talking about how to figure out where an area has Sasquatches in it.
And I apologize. I feel like I interrupted you before. You were telling us more about these dreamers.
Oh, well, I suppose the unique and strange machines that seem to crop up in eyewitness accounts from time to time and seem to never get quite as much attention as they should, and very much the same as like UFO lore used to be a lot of the time. There are a few standbys, like things that have shown up enough in forums and in chat rooms to sort of be lore, but then a lot of the time, if you try to make like a serious attempt to catalog the various information, it has its web hosting mysteriously revoked or something. You don't seem to be laughing at this.
No, I mean, it's lore. It's culture. I wouldn't deign to laugh at something like that. It sounds
Very
fascinating.
insensitive. Very insensitive to
Yeah,
do something like that.
it's
Yeah, this is
just-
people core to their belief systems. Yeah.
It sounds really incredible, though. These stories. I wonder if you'd be interested in getting together sometime and swapping stories. Is this the kind of thing that people just invent, or it's something that really just spreads organically? And
She gives you a thoughtful look. I'm going to need both of you to make cool rolls for me.
Sure.
I was hoping so.
Yeah.
That's a 7 for me.
Looking at my stats, got 9 on the dice, and
It'll be
cool
11 total.
+2. Yeah.
Yeah. She considers both of you kind of alternately for a long moment and slurps noisily on her coffee, or probably slurps normally on her coffee, but it sounds noisy because it's suddenly very quiet. And then she puts her cup down and kind of cups both of her hands around it and looks at it for a moment and glances at Ing and then sort of looks longer at Kato, and then she says, "Oh, you've seen one."
What, like a Sasquatch or a Mothman? A few.
She nods, smiling. She says, "Exactly." Well then, and she leans forward and kind of lowers her voice. Not that there's anybody close to you exactly, but she says, "I've seen one too." Or maybe it'd be more appropriate to say, "One found me." At least I think so. I have no other explanation that doesn't get, well, hard for most people to follow. I don't know what they are, but I think one encountered me as a child. I think that's what set all this off. Which one? Which one did you encounter?
Ing looks to Hecate.
It's rude to answer a question with a question, but we're getting very close to something here, and I'm not sure whether I believe in Providence. I think I believe in Providence. Do I believe in Providence? I might, but I have to briefly consider the possibility that you've been staking us out.
She does kind of chuckle and she says, "See, this is why we have to get to know each other a little better, because anybody who does know me would tell you that that's flatly impossible. I do not have the attention span for a stakeout."
That's fair. It can be taxing.
She gets a little more serious, though, and she says, "No, but I understand your hesitation. I do. I'm also impatient. It's another one of my character flaws."
Oof, we share that one in common.
She says, "So you certainly don't have to tell me anything you don't want to, but I am eager to hear about what your experience may have been, because you see, there are a few of these dreamers that have names and descriptions that have become sort of lore among the people who put the pieces together where they're available before they disappear from the internet. But the one I think I encountered, if it was a dreamer, if I did indeed encounter it, I haven't been able to find any information on at all. So I'm always looking for help or leads. So if you decide to share, well, you know where to find me." She nods at Cato at this, and because you're the one she gave a business card to. And she says, "And I usually know where to find you." And she nods at Ing, presumably alluding to the various sort of religious meetings. And she says, "But don't tarry too long, because, well, this is dangerous work, seeking these things out, and any one of us could come a cropper at any moment." I mean, that's true all the time, really, when you think about it. Which is, I guess, why people are religious so often. Not me, though. I'm trying to explain a specific experience that I had. And I think the supernatural is the only way to do it.
Well, you say it's hard for most people to understand, but I assure you, you've probably surmised that neither of us are most people. Give us a little time to think this over, though. Not too much. Like I said, I'm impatient too.
She nods. She finishes off her coffee in a way that sort of makes Cato, your stomach kind of sympathetically groan. And she says, no, an abundance of caution is wise, but I've never been accused of being wise myself. Quite the opposite, in fact. She sort of nods to Ing and says, "Ing can attest. So take care, and hopefully we'll survive to speak again." She picks up her empty cup and starts walking towards the exit.
Yeah. Thanks for providentially appearing, I suppose, and we'll be in touch about chasing dreamers, was it? Soon.
She gives you a sort of cheeky finger over her lips, and
I do a
nod.
speak no evil with two hands, two quite asymmetrical hands.
Speak evil only through the gaps that gesture entails in your particular case. And yeah,
Apatia,
she heads off.
I think that we will meet again. Until
I
next time.
believe so too.
Here's Tico.
She gives you a little sort of like phantom hat tip and walks down the stairs. So
we share a problem, don't we? We're both way too charmed by her to be sensible about this.
It really supernatural is the word that comes to mind. Yeah. Nevertheless, being unwise can lead to interesting places too. providential.
should probably cultivate foolishness as well as wisdom. I don't disagree. Matchstick would, though.
Oh, I'm sure. Absolutely. But after Matchstick is waltzed into this obvious trap and come out unscathed, I don't think that Matchstick has much of a leg to stand on.
That's a pretty good point. All right. Well, I cheers one more time.
Mm-hmm.
To foolishness.
To foolishness.
So back over in the soirée, if the
You're going about this in a very, like, increasing absurdity of pronunciation the longer it goes on, sort of like with Night Vale and the Murder Mystery Dinner Theater.
that is more or less the trajectory.
Well, I'm glad I'm
I
picking
intended
up
to
what
be
you're putting
upon.
down.
Yeah. So yeah, you certainly have a chance to try any of the seemingly pretty high quality, sort of finger foods on offer, and you have the opportunity to speak to some of the other folks there. But we are coming up on time a little, so let's get whatever else you might want to get done at this soirée. As to the degree that we can do it, sort of not in real time. That would probably be logistically preferable. But don't want to keep you from getting any information or making any contacts that you would like to.
I am not, I think, interested in meeting anyone who isn't a professional.
Mhm.
So I think I'm probably all set on there. I
Mhm.
would like to run by Hahi the
Mhm.
inclusion of others without specifically naming K&B, because that would be a danger to her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she looks thoughtful for a moment and she says, well, I think that I trust you to be paranoid enough to be trustworthy in this matter.
I'm glad my
You
reputation
may...
either precedes me or is so readily apparent.
She gives you a wry smile and says, little of column A.
Clearly, you've done your research.
She, sort of nods and says, I certainly try, but I certainly wouldn't get as much information without my associates. Their powers combined are quite remarkable. Anything else before departing the... Boy, I don't think I can mutate it any further.
He was not prepared for that.
I was, and it's still...
If you stick around any longer, he's going to swallow his tongue, though, so be careful.
Somebody warn his
yes,
wife.
please save me. All right, well, if there isn't anything else pressing...
Sorry, formulating phrasing.
Go for it.
It's probably not my first request, but before we go into anything truly ludicrous as far as exchanges of goods and services for money, the name that you addressed me as in the invitation is one that I would like to disappear.
She nods. She says, I can certainly look into it.
You seem to have a network of associates who are uniquely suited to accomplishing that in ways that I honestly thought I already had.
She nods with a little bit more certainty. She says, Yes. Yes, no, I think we should treat that task as a show of good faith on my part rather than compensation. I can't guarantee a timetable, but we'll be working on it.
Thank you. I appreciate that quite a bit.
I nod over Matchstick's shoulder.
I turn and look at you like you have no idea what I'm fucking talking about.
I incline my head and give a one-shouldered shrug.
And
in the meantime, I wish you a good evening.
Two of you as well. Thank you for coming, and be well. And, sort of politely disengages, and you are free to wrap up however else you might want to, or to head out.
I have nothing else pressing here.
Yeah, did anyone else in attendance catch my attention?
To Matchstick's point, no one else seems very professional, outside of the folks you've already talked to. So to the degree that is a factor, probably not. There is one other person who was there when you arrived but left shortly after, who gave off strong hacker vibes. But otherwise, these do appear to be more of sort of like the amateur dragnet who are still around.
Could I have a bunch of prep burning a hole in my pocket? So would an appropriate use of prep be to say that I had brought something that could collect some images or data on that other strong hacker vibe person? It's a little bit retconny, so I'm not sure.
Yeah, well, that is kind of what prep is used for, but I guess I'm just trying to imagine what you would have brought, like the specific thing.
Mama.
I mean, yeah, that works.
I could have adjusted my coat.
if we're good making it Mama, then I'm fine with that. Yeah, you can
Okay.
have some basic information, captured there.
Yeah, I'll spend a prep point for that.
Perfect.
Excuse me. But beyond that, nothing else.
So yeah, you head on out, and
all that prep wasted for me.
Sometimes
honestly,
you go
this is what
I
figured what was going to happen. So no harm, no foul.
Better to be prepared and not need it.
Oh, absolutely.
It made sense to be prepared and to not know what you were getting into. And it's, of course, possible that you could have blown the whole thing up if you had, wanted to, or made different decisions. So, it may have come in handy.
I know several ways that I could have blown the whole thing up.
Indeed.
As do I.
Observing them departing, presumably, not to railroad you, but presumably Ing and Kato will pack up their shop and decamp as well. And, in not short, because it's just half a station away, but, shortish order, return to Selden District. I think that's a pretty good place to have a, for once, chill, not urgent, cliffhanger-y kind of ending to our session. But seeing as we went through the whole cycle of prepping and, going on a mission and everything, everybody can take an experience point.
Which means we get a level next time.
Indeed. Yeah, they had enough banked there. I'll also say that we should not postpone rolling to see if we lose cash any further. So those of you with cash on hand should roll a d6, and you lose that much cash.
Roll a d6 and lose that much cash.
1d6,
Gotcha.
You lose that much cash.
Gotcha. I rolled 2, so...
Oh, yes, should roll 1.
Yeah. I roll 2. There's no way for me to keep my cash,
Okay.
right?
Well, wait, so you have 1 on hand.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so then yes, you just lose your cash, yeah, because 1d6 can come up as a 1. And
Is this distinct
Kato?
from rolling for economic shock?
It is. At the end of a session, you roll 1d6 and you lose that much cash.
Oh, I never
We
had any
waived
cash,
it last
so
time.
That's fine.
Yeah. Well, we waived the requirement last time because we didn't have an opportunity to spend it.
Right.
So, yeah.
I rolled a 2, which leaves me with 1 cash.
All right. Good deal. But I think with that logistic bit taken care of, that'll conclude this session of Dice Punks. Thanks for joining us. I hope our players and listeners enjoyed it as much as I did, and that you'll all join us again next time. If you're hearing us now, then you probably know where to listen to this, but we can be found almost any place one can listen to podcasts, as well as on the wider web at dicepunks.com and on Tumblr and Blue Sky as at Dicepunks. With that, I think we're ready to say farewell, so say goodbye to the kind folks back on Earth, players.
Thanks for listening, and, if this is the way things are going to go, we're going to have to outfitting with some new parts. We can't have these kinds of conversations and not get drunk.
Thank you for listening, everyone. Please don't turn into someone else's annoying mother.
Thanks for listening, folks. And, yeah, don't acquire any annoying parentals who don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
Listening is the best kind of sinning. Well, it's right up there anyway.
One of these things is not like the others.
And as the poet once said, it can talk, and it listens and hears if you want it to, and it's telling me everything here isn't true. Beloved listeners, thank you for tuning in. Stick around through the admin stuff for Luke's Lies. The music in this episode, Augment or Die, is by Emerson Boatwright and our very own bookmonger, Drew. Check out their other work at the link in the show notes. Editing on our rad new cover art was done by Joanne, who's also appeared on a podcast now and again. Check out her work around the internet, where she goes by Anything Sows. Site design and graphics for dicepunks.com are by the one and only Officer Armitage, Robin. Hardwired Island is by Paul Macevic, Freya Erlingsdotter, and Minerva Majanda. You can find Hardwired Island at etten.itch.io/hardwiredisland. Links to the system and authors can be found on the Punk Grimoire section of our website, dicepunks.com. Thanks so much for listening. If you liked what you've heard, that's Warlord enough on its own, but if you're so inclined, you can help us out by rating and reviewing us wherever you listen to us, telling your friends who you think would like us to give us a listen, and even by heading over to our Patreon at patreon.com/dicepunks. We have fun rewards available to backers, including a patron-only Discord and access to the Dice Peaks After Show for episodes 1.1 and following. Regardless, we hope you'll tune in again, and until then, remember, subtlety is for cowards.
Have you ever wondered about how dense space stations are? How many people are here, living, sleeping, fucking behind fancy plastic walls? Well, panels anyway. Now remember that we're living in a dystopian capitalist hellscape that requires the existence of poor people to scare other people into working for shit wages. Where do the homeless go in such a closed system? The basement. Those deemed insufficiently productive, valuable, employable, or diligent, whatever's the relevant factor for one's unhoused status, have options. Dying, drudge work if their physical facility allows, or trying to find community in the station's between spaces. I spent some part of my formative years commuting between basements and classes. Had to move around a lot to stay off porcine radar, and otherwise not have folks connecting upstanding, or at least diligent student, Luke Byrne with someone whose existence my classmates' awareness would happily have skipped over. So, from a station rat who, if you're hearing me, you might actually respect, don't judge someone too harshly if you learn they don't have a place to live. You're only so far from considering it yourself.